Good afternoon. My name is Courtney Wheeler, and I am here alongside Michaela Taylor, and I serve as the Student Government President at the University of Kentucky. We are the elected voice for all students. Through many conversations with students, we recognize the need for them to learn more about the bias reporting process. As a result, we are here today to be transparent about this intimidating but necessary process to protect all students here at UK. I am here today with four different hosts. First, we will start with Jason Brooks. He's the Executive Director for Institutional Engagement. Dr. Tricia Montgomery is the Acting Dean of Students. Martha Alexander is the Executive Director, Office of Institutional Equity and the Title IX Coordinator. And Mike Brown is the Acting Director of the Office of Student Conduct. To kick it off, I will first ask Dr. Clement Montgomery, can you share a little more about your role at the university and our goal for today's discussion?
Good afternoon, all. So as Courtney mentioned, my name is Tricia Clement Montgomery, and I'm the Acting Dean of Students here at the University of Kentucky. It is truly an honor as part of my role to be able to support and advise, advocate for all 31,000 students here on our campus. I do that through a number of different ways, through programs, social activities, and various different campus partnerships and initiatives. More specifically, I actually have the opportunity to connect with students through multiple units that I work more intimately with throughout the academic year. Those units are Residence Life. I also have the opportunity to work with the Center for Support and Outreach and Intervention. I also work with the Student Conduct Office, Fraternity and Sorority Life. And those are pretty much all the units that I have the opportunity to work with. That said, through conversations with campus partners, as well as students that I've had the opportunity to interact with, we're really all here today through those conversations and learning that a lot of our students are experiencing bias on our campus. And they honestly need to understand this process and have a place to go should they experience bias, and know that the university is committed to making sure that we address any concerns that they experience. So today, I hope that we learn and we are transparent in sharing with you just exactly what should happen should a student experience bias on our campus at all.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna move over to Jason. Good morning, Jason. Could you talk about your role at the university as well as your office's role as it relates to bias incident reporting?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Michaela. I'm Jason Brooks, Executive Director for Institutional Engagement, and I have the privilege and honor to be able to be one of the co-facilitators for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive implementation plan for the institution itself. It is a large, wide initiative that impacts not only the greater University of Kentucky community, but also the Lexington community itself. Built within 6 work streams, there are 17 projects, and those 17 projects are ingrained into every facet of this, not only the student experience, but also the faculty and staff experience itself. Along with that, I also have the pleasure of being the bias incident report coordinator for the institution. Whereas when a faculty, a staff, a student, or a community member experiences some type of bias itself, they're able to fill out a report online, and then those reports come directly to me. At that particular point, that report is then assessed, reviewed, and then sent to 1 or 2 of 3 offices, depending on the particular situation. That could be sent to the Office of Student Conduct, the Office for Equal Opportunity and Employment Opportunities, which is IEEO, or the Office of Legal Counsel itself. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jason. And next we will hear from Martha Alexander.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for having me. So I'm with the Office of Institutional Equity and Equal Opportunity. Some people call us the Title IX office as well, but our actual title is Institutional Equity and Equal Opportunity. We're the office on campus that assists the university community, that's faculty, staff, and students, with any concerns that they might have related to discrimination, harassment, and sexual misconduct. So in doing that, we of course work with a lot of other offices, including Jason in his role as the BERT team coordinator, and also Mike in his role as the Office of Student Conduct Director. So the things that you need to know about our office are that you can get to us in any variety of ways. You can either make a report with BERT and get referred to us through Jason, or you can make a report directly to our office. We have a report form on our website. You can also just give us a call too. So our policies are, the policies that we're responsible for are AR61, that's the policy on discrimination and harassment, and AR62, that's the policy on sexual misconduct at the university. Our office addresses any types of discrimination or harassment that occur on the basis of a protected class. So we do that in a variety of ways, and we're going to be talking more about our investigation process later on. But just know if you're having any type of concern that relates to discrimination or harassment at all, we're here to help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to hear from Mike Brown.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon, and thank you for having me. Again, my name is Mike Brown. I'm the acting director for the Office of Student Conduct. Similar to what Martha just shared, the reports can make their way to our office either through a BERT report or reporting directly via our website at uky.edu/student conduct. So in the Office of Student Conduct, our jurisdiction and our process is dictated by the Code of Student Conduct, which is an administrative regulation number 410. So when we receive a report, we are first evaluating, does the behavior or the incident that occurred violate any policies in that Code of Student Conduct? We also know that just because a situation or behavior does not rise to a policy violation level, we know that there may be harm that was caused through that situation. So we're also determining what is in this case, the bias that occurred, what is the situation that happened? And we're balancing that with the First Amendment as well. So was the behavior or the speech protected by the First Amendment? That may limit us in actually having a policy violation. However, there are certain situations that, as I said, may not rise to that level, but still cause harm. In those situations, we tend to engage in what's called a facilitated dialogue process. So we help the students, the individual student or a group of students that were involved in that situation to reflect on what happened and the harm they may have caused through their behavior or through their speech. So through that conversation, we focus on what it means to live in a community with all different kinds of people and how that may have impacted others in the community. So when possible, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we do explore other ways to resolve that conflict, even if that falls outside of those policy violations.
Thank you so much, Mike. We will now hop into some questions. Thank you all for introducing yourself and letting us know what your offices do. Jason, where can students go and get support and advocate during the bias incident process?
There are currently 2 offices that service students, faculty, and staff during a bias incident. Also realizing that advocacy during this process of needing help and assistance is fluid, and so students, faculty, and staff and community members can access these 2 offices. One of the offices used to be called BIS, Bias Incident Support Services, which is now called the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Social Justice. This particular office can help students, faculty, and staff navigate through the institution on any particular additional services or alternative routes to being able to accomplish whatever they need to accomplish within the recommendations of that particular office from by way of the student. And so that office does a lot of, I would say, one-on-one advocacy with students, faculty, and staff itself. Whereas in the Office for Institutional, IEDE, Inclusive Excellence and Diversity Education, that particular office is more geared towards if a student organization or a faculty member or anybody in administration needed additional workshop support when it deals with cultural competencies or diversity, equity, and inclusion or anti-racist training, they could contact that particular office, and that office will be able to provide that type of educational workshops and training for those particular spaces itself. And so students, faculty, staff can actually access those particular areas of advocacy and educational support throughout the whole process of submitting a bias incident report. And even if they don't submit a bias incident report, they can still access those two particular offices. The Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Social Justice, the email address is biss@uky.edu. And then the Office for Inclusive Excellence and Diversity Education is at iede@uky.edu.
Great, thank you so much, Jason. I'm going to point this next question to Mike. And I'd like to ask, is restorative justice an option within the process?
Yeah, thank you. So restorative justice is an option throughout any of our processes in the Office of Student Conduct. This is an alternative method to resolving conflict, and it involves bringing everyone that's involved in a certain situation together, getting in a circle, talking about the situation that happened and sharing and reflecting about what occurred. So this is a way that we try to address that harm that was caused and try to work toward a solution that repairs that harm. The trick with restorative justice or some of these alternate methods of conflict resolution is that everyone involved has to agree to be involved. This isn't a process that we could, force somebody or compel somebody to be involved, because we're trying to work toward that good resolution for the group that was affected. So it is certainly an option. We try to explore that when possible, but unfortunately there are some conflicts that just aren't able to be resolved for one reason or another, that people aren't interested in having that conversation, or maybe we don't know the full parties that were involved. But that is something that is absolutely an option, even outside of a bias report. We engage with students pretty frequently about options we can provide to help resolve whatever conflicts may be going on. So that's certainly something we try to evaluate and we'll try to move through because we understand that just because a policy violation may not occur, it does not mean that there has not been harm or something that has occurred from that situation. So yes, absolutely, that would be an option within our process.
Thank you, Mike. I will now move over to the Acting Dean of Students. What proactive measures are in place to encourage behavior that is respectful of other cultures and communities on our campus?
Proactive measures that we have implemented here at the University of Kentucky is pretty much requiring all of our students to make some form of commitment to respecting other cultures and communities. This can actually be seen or reflected in the SGA Creed. So many of our students have probably seen the Creed, have listened to the Creed during an induction, things of that nature. And that is actually a commitment that we ask all of our students to engage in and to remember. Another way that you can possibly see this is for all of our students who pledge and are part of a Greek community in the FSL community during new member induction. There is always a conversation in relation to respecting others, other cultures, and other communities as well. And then inside of the residence halls, there is community standards that are provided to all students who live in the residence halls. And they too have to commit to respecting their neighbors and students within inside the residence halls from different cultures and backgrounds. This is also reflected, lastly, in our student code of conduct. And so by asking all of our students to make this commitment, should at some point or any point that be a violation or be violated, that the student code of conduct can actually hold students accountable who may demonstrate or exhibit behaviors that are not respectful to communities and other cultures. So those are just a few of the different proactive measures that we have here on our campus.
Thank you so much. The next question I'll pose to Mike and Martha is, what's the normal length of time for an investigation, and is it different from office to office, that length of time?
Okay, I'll go first. I think it is different from office to office. And for us in institutional equity, it really depends on the complexity of the situation that we're looking at. Some things can get resolved pretty quickly. Some things might take a little bit longer. But the important point is that regardless of how long it's going to take, you're going to hear regular updates from us. And we're going to try to get it resolved as quickly as we can. But just do keep in mind that some things are more complex than others, and they can take a little bit more time.
And from the Office of Student Conduct, it's essentially the same answer that I have as Martha, is that it really depends on the information we get in. Some reports come in with a lot of information on the front end. We may not need to do much of an investigation. We can really just jump in and start working toward those conflict resolution methods. Some information we may need to look into, social media posts or individual, asking individual students to meet with us to provide information. But really with bias reports, we may have enough information on the front end because somebody has, for example, posted something on Twitter that is derogatory that we really don't need to investigate. We can see the post and we can just have that conversation with that student that was involved.
Thank you, Mike and Martha. I will go back to Martha. When I submit a BERT report, I was never contacted. Why would that be?
So you definitely should have been contacted. And if you were not, please let us know. We contact people based on the information that they enter into the report form. So if you did not receive a contact either from me or Jason pretty immediately, please check in with both of us to make sure that we have the correct contact information. We always want to at least acknowledge that we received the report. And coming from an institutional equity standpoint, if you've made a report of behavior that you've experienced, we're always going to reach back out to you so that we can get some more information and talk to you about your options for proceeding with our office. Our process in institutional equity is what we call complainant driven, which means that we think that the person who experienced the harm is in the best position to tell us what sort of process they need to feel safe on campus again. So we're not going to take any action unless you're talking to us and telling us really what you need out of the process. Now, the only exception to that is if you're alleging harm that was taken either by a university employee or represents a greater threat to the security of the university. In that case, we're going to take some action, but we're still going to want to talk to you before we do that so that you know what we're doing.
Great, thank you, Martha. I'm going to give you a bit of a break and ask this question to Mike. So what's to be expected at the end of an investigation for a case?
Yeah, so that really depends on what our goal is. At the end of an investigation, if we have enough information to determine that a policy violation occurred, we may move into our adjudication process. So kind of our quote unquote traditional student conduct process. If we are moving into some kind of alternate conflict resolution method, such as restorative justice, then we would be contacting the people involved, including potentially the person that did report that information, to start that process of preparing for restorative justice or mediation or whatever the case may be. So what's to be expected is that we will address the behavior in some way. It may, depending on the information that we have, that could change what our process is. So we are always evaluating what is the most appropriate way to address the behavior that has been reported, and who needs to be involved in that. So yeah, that's typically what we're doing. It's hard to say exactly here's what's going to happen because that is so different based on the different cases we may be managing.
Thank you, Mike. This question is for anyone on the panel. What types of reporting are confidential and what offices are considered private?
Okay, I'll jump in for this one too. Okay, so at the University of Kentucky, there are 3 confidential reporting offices. And what that means is that there are 3 offices on campus where you can talk. And those offices are able to assist you without sharing the information that you share in any way, shape, or form. Those offices are the Counseling Center, UK Healthcare if you need healthcare for some reason, and the VIP Center. Every other office on campus is what we call a private reporting option. So any other employee or office, if you go to them and you say, I experienced this type of discrimination or this type of harassment, or I experienced sexual misconduct, any other office on campus is going to refer you to my office, to institutional equity. And what that's going to trigger is an email from us. So always check your email account. Whatever email is associated with your student account, please always check that. It's going to trigger that email from us, and then we're going to want to meet with you so that we can discuss what options you have to move forward.
The Office of Student Conduct would be considered one of those offices that are private. So if a student comes to me and shares, the case of sexual misconduct or whatever it may be, I would be required to then report that to Martha as a mandatory reporter. So when we are managing cases, we do not just share information that comes from our office unless somebody needs to know that. So there may be, work I'm doing with Jason or with Martha or the Office of Residence Life, but we are only sharing that with the folks that need to know that in order to be able to do their job function.
And the Office of Institutional Diversity is in the same bucket as the Office of Student Conduct. Everything is private and will only be shared amongst those who need to have it. It is not a confidential office based upon institutional regulations and policies.
Great, thank you all. Jason, I'll ask you, who is required to report behavior?
So who is required to report the behavior? Technically, anybody who sees something wrong, report it. If you see something, report it. Because once we actually have it reported, then we're able to actually start the investigation itself. We do receive a number of BERT reports that are information only, which allows people to just say, hey, this is what's happening on campus or around the campus. Just for your information, we don't necessarily want any type of action made. But just an FYI, for those who are wanting information only on their BERT reports, just to let us know, I still submit those to the respectable offices just for them to have that information. And part of the reason why is because even though you're not necessarily wanting an action to be taken, we need to have that information just in case if a name or a situation comes up repeatedly, we actually have information that may help us further the investigation when we actually do get a report that says take action, or if there's already an open case, the information may end up being added to that case regardless. So Martha, Mike, am I incorrect in that? Please feel free to correct me.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. And an important note about the information only reports, you may still get a contact from us, and we would do that for the reasons that Jason just said. If we're aware that there is a pattern of behavior or that we're seeing a certain type of cases occur in a certain location, we're going to want to reach out to you, see if we can get some more information about that, just to better be able to evaluate the situation. So again, please check your email.
Thank you both, Jason and Martha. If I file a report or a complaint, can I discontinue that process at any time and maintain my confidentiality? And this question is for Martha.
The answer is yes, because our process is a complainant-driven process. At any time, you can tell us that you have changed your mind and you do not want to do an investigation anymore. Now, in most cases, we're going to say, okay, absolutely, no problem. If this is one of those cases, though, where you've made an allegation against an employee or it potentially impacts other people's safety at on campus, we're going to have to continue to do something. But again, we're going to talk to you about what that is so that you can understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, when it comes to this idea of maintaining confidentiality, so our office is one of those offices that is a private office. We do share information with other people when they need to know it. But what you need to know as a complainant, the person involved in the complaint, is that we will protect your privacy to the extent possible under the law. So we're not just going to be telling people that you've made a complaint with us if they don't need to know that information.
And are there any exceptions to that process that we just discussed?
Really, the only exceptions would be that threat to university safety or if a complaint has been made against an employee. Any other situation we consider to be part of our complainant-driven process.
Thank you, Martha. I will now ask Tricia, what are resources for students if you are in need of help after you filed a report, such as the counseling office, or what other resources might be available for students?
There's actually a number of different resources on our campus that we really want students to take advantage of should they file a report. And one, I'll start with, let's say that this incident may have occurred inside of our residence halls. Our staff are actually trained to make sure that we support students through this process. Because of things that Martha and Jason and both Mike have all shared here today in terms of confidentiality, those individuals may not have the details in relation to the incident, but they can absolutely serve as a layer of support. Should you have questions about the process, or should you just need to talk to someone or talk through that? Again, we strongly encourage, however, and these individuals you can actually come in contact with, not just inside the residence halls, but any one of our faculty and staff here on campus can actually support a student through those particular incidences while they wait on hearing back from what the report will be or the outcome will be. In addition to that, all of our staff will more than likely strongly encourage that students utilize the counseling center to have someone to speak to in the event that they've experienced some type of hurt or trauma on our campus. So that's probably the biggest resource. But again, any one of our staff members inside the residence halls here on campus can actually support students through that process and are prepared and trained to do so.
Thank you so much. Jason, if you could just tell our listeners where they can go for more information, whether that's online or via email.
Yeah, sure can. If you are wanting to file a bias incident report, you can actually go to uky.edu/diversity, and it will take you to the homepage of the Office for Institutional Diversity, and there will be a box that says submit a BERT report or a bias report, and it will take you directly to the site. I would say that's probably the fastest way to get to that actual BERT report. On top of that, if you're needing advocacy help, please contact Carol Taylor Shim or Brandon Colbert within the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Social Justice, and they'll be able to assist you in whatever type of advocacy that you need and support. And their email address is biss@uky.edu. And if you're needing more of a workshop or training, I would contact Dr. Nicole Martin and the Office for Inclusive Excellence and Diversity Education at IEDE@uky.edu. If you are needing mental and emotional health assistance, please contact UK Counseling Services. And if you are needing something that is beyond what we're able to provide and you need to contact emergency help, please contact UKPD at 859-8573.
Thank you so much, Jason. And thank you so much to all of the panelists for coming out today to speak with us and explain a little bit more. And thank you all for joining us today for this Facebook Live. I hope this is the beginning of more conversation around student rights and support mechanisms that are provided here at UK.